Black investor dragged from first class 24 hours later. He buys the airline that shamed him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Get off my plane! The shout cracked through the first-class cabin like thunder in a church. Every head turned, every sound died. The man yelling wasn't a passenger, he was the captain. Uniform sharp, veins standing at his temple, finger stabbing toward one man who hadn't moved an inch. Julian Miles sat perfectly still. Dark suit, no jewelry, just calm. The kind of calm that scares people who rely on noise. Sir, the captain barked again, this cabin is for premium guests only. You need to step out before I call security. Julian's voice didn't rise. I have a first-class ticket, the captain scoffed. And I have eyes. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter fluttered through the rows. A woman in pearl earrings whispered, he probably sneaked in. Another passenger muttered, must have been an upgrade error. The air thickened, polite racism wrapped in airline tone. From the aisle, a young flight attendant, fresh-faced, badge-reading trainee Mia froze mid-step. She had seen his boarding pass scan green, but her senior Nicole leaned close and hissed, don't interfere. People like him always push boundaries. Julian looked at them both. No anger, just quiet measure. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Julian. The captain folded his arms. Last warning, you can walk out, or we'll drag you out. Julian finally looked up. His eyes didn't blink. Then drag the truth with me. That sentence hung there heavy, defiant, precise. Nicole frowned. Don't try to sound smart, sir. This is company policy. He tilted his head slightly. You sure you know whose policy that is? She didn't answer. Rows ahead, a passenger lifted his phone, pretending to check messages but already recording. The red dot blinked. Justice had witnesses now. Julian adjusted his tie, voice low enough for only the captain to hear. You're making a mistake. The captain laughed, sharp and bitter. The only mistake was letting you board. There ever been like to do a Frenchin in there ever. Behind them, engines hummed softly, but the energy inside the cabin was electric anger against composure, arrogance against silence. Mia's hands trembled. She whispered to herself. His scan was green. I know it was. Nicole turned sharply. What did you say? Nothing, ma'am. Julian leaned back in his seat, gaze steady, unbothered. He'd seen this scene before in banks, in lobbies, in boardrooms, where men in uniforms mistook color for character. Every time, the script was the same. But today's ending would be different. The captain signaled to the nearest flight officer. Escort this man off, now. Julian smiled, not mocking, not fearful. Just final. Because in exactly 30 minutes, the man shouting, get off my plane, would learn the truth. It wasn't his plane anymore. Part 2. The seat he paid for, to 600 tokens. The cabin was still humming when the captain stormed out, his footsteps heavy down the aisle. Passengers murmured, pretending to scroll their phones, but no one missed a second of what was happening. Julian Miles stayed seated in 2A, his seat, the one he had booked under his own name, paid for with the same black Amex that had funded half the airline's expansion last year. But none of that mattered now, not to them. Nicole, the senior flight attendant, stepped closer. Her posture was polished, voice dipped in customer service sugar. Sir, I'll ask you nicely this time. Move to economy before this becomes a problem. Julian's tone didn't change. It's already a problem. She blinked. Excuse me? He turned slightly toward the window. You just don't know which kind yet. At row 4, a passenger whispered, Man, why's he pushing it? Just move. His seatmate answered quietly. Because he shouldn't have to. The younger attendant, Mia, lingered near the galley. She couldn't unsee the boarding scanner flashing green when Julian boarded. Valid ticket. First class. Her chest tightened, but Nicole's glare pinned her back like gravity. Julian exhaled, eyes calm. mind replaying memories like film frames. 20 years earlier, airport security in Atlanta. Random check. His suit was cheaper then, his patience thinner. But the tone was the same, always the same. He blinked the memory away. Present moment. Same judgment, different altitude. Nicole crossed her arms. Sir, our captain made himself clear. Julian's eyes lifted, voice precise. Your captain shouted at a paying passenger in front of 40 witnesses. That's not clarity. That's career suicide. Nicole's jaw tightened. You threatening me? No, he said softly. I'm warning you. About gravity. A few seats away, a woman in a red blazer looked up. This is getting ugly, she whispered to her husband. He nodded. And it's being recorded. Indeed it was. The man in 3C angled his phone low, capturing every word, every breath. The camera saw what the system refused to. Mia took a hesitant step forward. Ma'am, she said quietly to Nicole. His name shows on the manifest. Seat 2A. Nicole cut her off. Stay out of it, trainee. But out of it. Julian watched the exchange. Expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket. The motion drew every eye in the cabin. He pulled out a boarding pass, printed, crisp, official, and laid it gently on the tray table. Nicole leaned in. Fake passes look real these days. Julian smiled faintly. So do apologies, but they're still worthless when too late. And S-17. The engines thrum deeper now. Pre-flight checks nearly complete. The captain's voice echoed faintly from the cockpit. If he's not out in 2 minutes, ground security will handle it. Mia swallowed hard. He doesn't deserve this. Nicole didn't even look at her. Deserves got nothing to do with policy. Julian turned, meeting her eyes not with anger, but with finality. Policy doesn't protect bias, it exposes it. The words landed like a verdict. The cabin went silent. Outside, rain began to streak across the windows, thin lines on glass, like history repeating itself. Inside, a man sat in seat 2A, calm and unshaken. And somewhere, deep in the airline's headquarters, his name Julian Miles was about to light up a boardroom screen. Because when he said gravity, he didn't mean physics. He meant consequences. The captain's voice returned through the intercom, clipped and cold. Cabin crew, stand by. Passenger in 2A is being non-compliant. Those words non-compliant were poison dressed as protocol. Julian exhaled slowly. He'd heard them before, in different rooms, different uniforms. They always meant the same thing. You're not one of us. Nicole marched back down the aisle, her heels striking the carpet like a countdown. Sir, you've left us no choice, she said, hand outstretched. I'm escorting you off. Julian didn't move. You're certain you want to do that? Her voice sharpened. I'm certain you don't belong in this seat. That sentence cut cleaner than the captain's shout. A few passengers gasped. Others stared at their screens, pretending not to hear. From the galley, Mia whispered to herself. He paid for it. Julian turned his gaze toward her. Calm, grateful. Then to Nicole. You just said what this company's been hiding for years. Nicole hesitated. What's that supposed to mean? That comfort has a color, and you only serve it when it matches your reflection. The line hung in the air, thick as storm clouds. In the back row, a businessman muttered, This is gonna go viral. His companion whispered, Already is. The red light on his phone blinked. Julian didn't raise his voice. Before you call security, he said, check your manifest again. Nicole turned to Mia. Run it. Mia nodded quickly, tapped on the tablet. Her brow furrowed. It says 2A, Miles Julian. Nicole snapped. That's impossible system error. No, ma'am, Mia said, steadier now. It's verified. The silence was instant. The captain's voice cracked through again. Update? Nicole pressed her radio. Still resolving, Captain. An Emmerich quote, but everyone knew there was nothing left to resolve. Julian leaned back. You tore up my boarding pass, called me a fraud, and threatened to drag me off a flight I legally board. If that's company policy, it's about to get rewritten. Nicole swallowed hard, words failing her. He remembered his father's voice decades ago, after another humiliation in another place. Son, power doesn't mean you fight every battle. It means you choose the one they can't walk away from. Julian looked around the cabin. Funny, he said softly, how justice always needs witnesses. Several phones lifted higher. Someone whispered, "Say that again." He didn't. He didn't need to. Nicole took a step back, whispering to Mia, "Delete that log entry." Mia froze. "That's falsifying a record." "Do it," Nicole hissed. Mia shook her head. "No." For the first time, someone else in the uniform stood with him. Julian's phone buzzed in his palm. One vibration, then another. A message flashed across the screen. "Board alert, incident flagged. CEO notified." He smiled quietly, slid the phone face down. "Sir," Nicole said, voice trembling. "Who exactly are you?" Julian's answer was measured, almost kind. "You'll know soon enough. Right after the captain learns the word non-compliant can apply to him too." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, the cabin waited, no longer sure which side of history it was sitting on. The storm outside began to rattle the windows, faint and rhythmic, a fitting soundtrack to the tension now thick enough to touch. The flight hadn't moved an inch, yet everyone felt airborne, suspended between discomfort and dread. Nicole stood rigid near Julian's seat, fingers clutching her tablet like a shield. Her polished smile had evaporated. Now her lips were pressed thin, her authority leaking with every breath. "Security's coming," she muttered. Julian's tone didn't waver. "So is accountability." At the galley, Mia looked down at her hands. She could feel her heart pounding against her ID badge. Every instinct told her to stay quiet. Every principle screamed to speak. She'd only been on the job for 2 weeks, but some moments define a career before it begins. Julian turned his gaze toward her. "Do you believe what you saw?" Her eyes widened. "Yes, sir." "Then don't let anyone make you delete the truth." The words weren't loud, but they carried across the cabin, landing on every passenger like a quiet order. A man in row 3 whispered to his wife, "He's not scared." She nodded. "No, he's waiting." Nicole leaned closer, voice hushed but sharp. "You're escalating this, Mr. Miles. It is a Vastion's follows." He met her eyes evenly. "No, you escalated it the moment you decided my presence was a threat." She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked mid-sentence. "You think this is about race?" Julian didn't answer right away. The silence did it for him. Then he said, "No, it's about reflex. You saw someone who didn't fit your image of first class, and your reflex decided policy." The captain's voice buzzed through the intercom again. "Crew report. Why is the delay continuing?" Nicole pressed the button. "Still verifying, Captain." Julian smiled faintly. That's one word for denial. A small chuckle rippled through the cabin, not from humor, but recognition. Everyone knew this wasn't about a ticket anymore. It was about dignity in a space built to measure worth by fabric, tone, and skin. Julian slowly reached for his phone again. The gesture alone made Nicole step back. He tapped once. The call connected instantly. "Rachel," he said quietly, "activate internal protocol. Tag this flight. Real-time feed." Her voice came through, crisp, calm, efficient. "Already recording. Compliance board notified." "You want live escalation?" "Stand by." "Yes, Mr. Miles." Nicole blinked. "Who's Rachel?" Julian looked up at her. "Someone whose job will still exist tomorrow." Mia gasped softly. She had seen confidence before: corporate, performative, shallow, but this was different. This was certainty born from truth. At the far end, a passenger in business attire finally spoke up. "Miss, I think you owe him an apology." Nicole spun. "Sir, please stay seated." He raised his phone. "No, I think I'll keep standing." And recording. Another passenger followed suit. Then another. Cameras everywhere now, blinking red, unblinking witnesses. Julian didn't flinch. "You don't need to post it," he said to them, voice low but firm. "Just remember it." Nicole backed away, breathing uneven. The captain's voice called again, impatience bleeding through static. "If the passenger's still on board in 2 minutes, I'm authorizing removal." Julian stood, slow, measured, controlled. "Then you better make the call," he said quietly, "because the next one won't be from you." He turned toward the window, where lightning briefly lit the logo on the wing: Skylink Air. His company, his investment, his stage. And as thunder rolled again, Julian Miles adjusted his cuffs, preparing not for departure but for reckoning. The minutes dragged like turbulence before takeoff. Outside, lightning flickered across the wing. Inside, tension hung thicker than the air-conditioned chill. Passengers whispered, some angry, some anxious, all waiting for someone to break the silence. It wasn't Julian. He sat calm, spine straight, hands folded over his phone like it was both shield and sword. He didn't need noise. He had presence, the kind that rewrites rooms without raising volume. Nicole turned toward the cockpit. "Captain, passenger is refusing to comply." His voice burst back through the speaker, sharp enough to cut glass. "Then get him off my plane." The words echoed through the cabin, hard and ugly. Julian looked up slowly. "There it is," he said softly. The phrase that built a history. The captain marched out seconds later, jaw tight, authority cracking. "Sir, this is the final time I'll ask." Julian stayed seated. "Final sounds right." Behind them, a sound small but steady clicked on. A red light blinked from the corner of the galley. Mia, the trainee, was recording. Her hand trembled, but her eyes were steady. Nicole snapped. "What are you doing?" Mia swallowed hard. "Documenting. That's a violation of crew protocol." "So is erasing a passenger's name from the manifest?" She shot back. Gasps scattered across the cabin. Julian turned toward her, the faintest nod approval without words. The captain glared. "You're done, young lady. Step aside." Mia didn't move. "Not until you check the system yourself." Her voice carried something rare, conscience with teeth. She turned the tablet toward him. "Seat 2A. Julian Miles, verified." Nicole tried to snatch it away, but Mia held firm. "Every action you've taken is time-stamped. The system logs can't lie." The captain's face reddened, eyes flicking between the screen and Julian. Julian rose, slow and deliberate, the cabin rising with him, not physically, but morally. "You shouted policy," he said, tone calm as gravity. "But policy is just fear written in paperwork. What you enforce isn't order, it's bias in uniform." The captain pointed at him, voice shaking with something between anger and realization. "Who are you?" Julian stepped forward once. "The man who signs your paycheck's paycheck." Gasps rippled again, louder this time, disbelief mixing with awe. Nicole scoffed, trying to salvage authority. "You're bluffing." Julian's phone buzzed. He turned it over once, screen glowing white. One line of text. "Board connected. Live feed active." He looked at her. "You'll want to lower your voice. The people you answer to are listening." Mia blinked, realization dawning. "He's the investor," she whispered. "The one who," Julian finished for her, "owns the parent company you just embarrassed." The captain's hand dropped from his hip. Nicole took a half step back. A passenger muttered, "Oh, damn." Another whispered, "This just flipped." Julian's voice softened, not gloating, not cruel, just absolute. "I asked for nothing but respect. You offered suspicion instead, and now respect will be mandatory." Silence pressed on the cabin, broken only by the soft ping of an incoming announcement. The intercom crackled. A new voice, older, composed, corporate, filled the air. "This is Skylink Command. Effective immediately, Captain Doyle and Lead Attendant Harris are relieved of duty pending investigation." Mia's breath caught. Nicole's tablet slipped from her hands. Julian didn't smile. He just sat back down, folded his hands, and looked out the window. Lightning flashed again, and for a moment, the reflection on the glass showed not a passenger, but power itself. The witness had spoken, the system had listened, and the storm outside was finally matching the one they'd created inside. The cabin lights dimmed. For the first time, the engines went silent, grounded by something stronger than weather. Consequence. No one spoke. Even the hum of conversation that usually filled first class had vanished. Only breathing, shallow and nervous, broke the quiet. Nicole's face was pale. Her hands shook as she reached for her radio, but the line was dead, disconnected remotely by Skylink Command. Her voice cracked. "Captain?" No response. He was gone. The door to the cockpit had sealed behind him, a quiet exile. Julian sat still, one leg crossed over the other, his phone resting in his palm like a verdict waiting to be read. "Rachel," he said softly. "Status." Her voice came through his earpiece, calm, professional. "Command confirmed full suspension. Legal's documenting. Do you want me to continue the feed?" He thought for a moment, then said, "Let them watch." A few rows back, the passengers exchanged looks, awe, guilt, and disbelief. They had just witnessed the invisible turn visible. A man humiliated for existing too calmly in the wrong seat, now commanding the room without raising his tone. Mia, the trainee, stood near the galley, hands clasped. She whispered, almost to herself, "I've never seen justice happen this fast." Julian heard her. "That's because it usually waits for permission. Today it didn't." Nicole finally spoke, barely audible. "You could have just told us who you were." Julian turned his gaze toward her. "And you could have treated me like I didn't have to." "You do dot." The words landed like judgment, not shouted, not cruel, just true. A faint notification pinged on his screen. Media alert. Passenger uploads trending. He sighed, not in annoyance, but inevitability. "This was never supposed to go public," he murmured. "But maybe it should." The rain outside had stopped. The reflection of the runway lights shimmered on the window, sharp lines of gold and red, like a warning and a promise. Julian glanced at Mia. "You still recording?" "Yes, sir." "Keep it. Don't post it. Proof belongs to truth, not entertainment." She nodded. "Yes, sir." He looked forward again. The cabin seemed smaller now, humbled. The luxury that once separated rows now felt like distance from shame. Julian spoke quietly, to no one in particular. "Power isn't about volume, it's about evidence. And this plane, it's full of it." This seated, he leaned back, eyes on the reflection of lightning fading behind him, and for the first time since the shouting began, he smiled, not from victory, but release. The flight was paused. But justice? It had already taken off. The cabin door opened again, not with authority this time, but hesitation. A new voice spoke from the threshold, calm and older. "Mr. Miles?" Julian looked up. A man in a navy blazer with gold stripes stepped in, posture stiff but respectful. He wasn't part of the original crew. His badge read, "Operations Director, Airline Security Division. I'm here to de-escalate the incident," he said carefully, glancing around at the silent rows of passengers. Julian gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Then start by sitting." It was more command than invitation. The director obeyed. Cameras were still raised. Every phone in the cabin was recording proof that tone had changed. Nicole lingered by the galley, hollow-eyed. The captain's voice never returned. The hierarchy that once ruled the cabin had collapsed in front of everyone. Julian spoke evenly. "You've watched the footage?" "Yes, sir." "And?" The director exhaled. "It's indefensible. I'd like to offer an apology on behalf of—" Julian stopped him with a raised hand. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to her." He pointed toward Mia, the trainee still standing near the wall, hands clasped like she wasn't sure if she belonged in this story. The director blinked. "To her?" Julian nodded. "She told the truth when it was inconvenient. That's rarer than money in this business." Mia's eyes widened. "Sir, I was just doing what was right." Julian's voice softened. "That's exactly what people forget to do when it costs them something." Nicole turned away, biting her lip. The guilt on her face was almost human now. The director cleared his throat. "Mr. Miles, would you like to continue this flight privately? We can reboard you on another aircraft." Julian shook his head. "No, I'll stay right here. In this seat, the one they said wasn't mine." That line made half the cabin exhale at once, a mixture of awe and release. He leaned back, eyes half closed, tone now deliberate. When you strip dignity from someone in public, the apology has to happen in public too. The director nodded slowly. "Understood." He turned toward Nicole. "You'll issue the apology." Nicole hesitated. "Now?" "Yes, now." Her voice trembled as she faced Julian. "Mr. Miles, I was wrong. Deeply wrong. I let my judgment speak louder than my duty. Nonagal. Denebro comes in that." Julian's gaze stayed steady, unreadable. "And what did that judgment cost you?" She swallowed. "My integrity." He nodded once. "Then start rebuilding it. One truth at a time." The cabin was silent again, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was reflection. Julian reached for his phone, not to record, but to end the call still running to Rachel. "Deactivate protocol," he said quietly. Rachel's voice came through. "Understood, sir." Feed archived. He placed the phone down and looked out the window. Dawn was breaking over the runway, gold cutting through gray. The longest night of his career was ending, and it was everyone else's turn to wake up. The sky outside had softened to a pale silver. Morning light spilling across the cabin's leather seats like forgiveness slowly arriving. The passengers were still quiet, still processing what they'd seen. The kind of reversal you only read about in headlines that sound too poetic to be real. Julian Miles sat where he'd always belonged, seat 2A, but now the space around him felt transformed. Not by luxury, but by truth. Nicole stood near the galley, posture small, hands folded, her earlier arrogance now replaced with something closer to humility. She whispered, "Mr. Miles, if you wish, I can arrange another crew." He turned his head, calm. "No need, you're staying." She froze. "Sir?" He gestured toward Mia. "Because she deserves to see that change happens in real time, not in memos." Mia looked down, a faint tremor in her voice. "Sir, I didn't do anything extraordinary." Julian smiled softly. "In a world built on silence, telling the truth is extraordinary. There's anyone." The operations director remained standing by the cockpit door, hands clasped. "Mr. Miles, command would like to know your instructions moving forward." Julian tapped his phone once. "Rachel, connect me to the boardroom." A faint beep, then a clear tone. Voices echoed through the speaker, a dozen executives, their words cautious, reverent. "Mr. Miles, we've reviewed the live feed. We deeply regret," he interrupted. "Regret doesn't fix culture. Replace policy code 14B. Effective today. Discrimination is grounds for instant termination. No hearing required." There was silence on the line. Then, "Understood, sir." Julian ended the call, the faintest sigh leaving his chest. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small for justice. What filled the air now was authority earned, silent, final. Nicole took a tentative step forward. "I'll brief the team." Julian looked up. "No, you'll brief the passengers." Her lips parted, but no protest came. She turned toward the cabin, voice trembling yet clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skylink Air, I want to sincerely apologize to Mr. Miles and to all of you for the incident you witnessed. What happened here does not represent who we are, but it does represent what we must change." Applause didn't erupt, not yet, but nods spread down the rows like small lights flickering on one by one. Julian gazed out the window, voice low enough for only Mia to hear. This wasn't about punishment. It was about memory. She frowned. "Memory?" He nodded. "People forget lessons learned in silence. I make sure they remember." Outside, the rain had stopped completely. A runway worker guided a refueling truck under the wing business as usual, but everything had changed. Julian closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. The seat he'd been told he didn't belong in had just become the place where a company began its reckoning. And when justice sits down, no one dares to stand against it. The sky outside had softened to a pale silver, morning light spilling across the cabin's leather seats like forgiveness slowly arriving. The passengers were still quiet, still processing what they'd seen. The kind of reversal you only read about in headlines that sound too poetic to be real. Julian Miles sat where he'd always belonged, seat 2A, but now the space around him felt transformed. Not by luxury, but by truth. Nicole stood near the galley, posture small, hands folded, her earlier arrogance now replaced with something closer to humility. She whispered, "Mr. Miles, if you wish, I can arrange another crew." He turned his head, calm. "No need. You're staying." She froze. "Sir?" He gestured toward Mia. "Because she deserves to see that change happens in real time, not in memos." Mia looked down, a faint tremor in her voice. "Sir, I didn't do anything extraordinary." Julian smiled softly. "In a world built on silence, telling the truth is extraordinary." The operations director remained standing by the cockpit door, hands clasped. "Mr. Miles, command would like to know your instructions, moving forward." Julian tapped his phone once. "Rachel, connect me to the boardroom." A faint beep, then a clear tone. Voices echoed through the speaker, a dozen executives, their words cautious, reverent. "Mr. Miles, we've reviewed the live feed. We deeply regret," he interrupted. "Regret doesn't fix culture. Replace policy code 14B. Effective today, discrimination is grounds for instant termination, no hearing required." There was silence on the line. Then, "Understood, sir." The she call in appearances on the prize 7 tears. Julian ended the call, the faintest sigh leaving his chest. He wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small for justice. What filled the air now was authority earned, silent, final. Nicole took a tentative step forward. I'll brief the team. Julian looked up. No, you'll brief the passengers. Her lips parted, but no protest came. She turned toward the cabin, voice trembling yet clear. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skylink Air, I want to sincerely apologize to Mr. Miles and to all of you for the incident you witnessed. What happened here does not represent who we are, but it does represent what we must change. Applause didn't erupt, not yet, but nods spread down the rows like small lights flickering on one by one. Julian gazed out the window, voice low enough for only Mia to hear. This wasn't about punishment. It was about memory. She frowned. Memory? He nodded. People forget lessons learned in silence. I make sure they remember. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. A runway worker guided a refueling truck under the wing business as usual, but everything had changed. Julian closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. The seat he'd been told he didn't belong in had just become the place where a company began its reckoning. And when justice sits down, no one dares to stand against it. The intercom chimed softly, one long tone, one short. The cabin doors sealed, the engines hummed back to life. But no one was thinking about takeoff anymore. Every eye was still fixed on the man in 2A. Julian's phone vibrated once. A single notification slid across the screen. Ownership transfer confirmed. He smiled faintly. The acquisition had gone through. The irony was poetic. While they were trying to drag him off this plane, he'd quietly completed the purchase of the entire airline's parent company. Mia caught sight of the logo on his phone, her eyes widening. Sir, you really… Yes, he said, still looking out the window. I own it now. Every jet, every policy, every name tag. Nicole's breath hitched. It means, Julian said, turning toward her. This isn't just my seat anymore. It's my fleet. The words landed like thunder, but his tone was gentle, not pride, not revenge, just closure. The passengers stared, stunned, as the realization rippled through the cabin. The man they'd watched be humiliated was now their boss's boss's boss. Julian adjusted his cufflinks, checked his watch, and said quietly, Let's finish the flight. The captain never answered. Rachel's voice came through instead. Mr. Miles, clearance granted. You're officially in command. And with that, the engines roared not just into the sky, but into history. The jet glided through a sheet of white clouds, sunlight flooding the cabin in gold. It should have felt ordinary again, but it didn't. The air carried a strange, quiet, reverent and heavy, like everyone was afraid to disturb it. Julian sat reclined, reading through reports on his phone. The transfer of ownership was official. The airline that had humiliated him now existed under his name, and yet there was no satisfaction in his eyes, only calm. Mia approached carefully. Sir, what happens now? He looked up, meeting her gaze. Now they learn what leadership sounds like. How's that different from power? She asked. Julian smiled faintly. Power demands attention. Leadership earns silence because no one dares interrupt truth. Yet Monner met her sign by including the sign by Sav or Graf. Across the aisle, Nicole sat rigid, staring out the window. She wasn't crying, but her reflection said everything: remorse, fatigue, awakening. Julian noticed. You'll stay, he said quietly. Training division. You'll help rebuild the culture you broke. She turned, startled. You're not firing me? He shook his head. Firing teaches fear. Rebuilding teaches accountability. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then softly, Thank you. Julian looked ahead, watching the clouds part into endless light. Don't thank me. Just make sure no one else has to buy their dignity back. Outside, the horizon opened clean, vast, unbroken. Inside, the cabin felt lighter. Justice had taken flight, and for once, it was quiet. The aircraft floated above sunrise, the world below wrapped in clouds and consequence. The cabin had returned to quiet, but it was a new kind of quiet, the kind that follows truth. Julian watched the horizon burn gold, his reflection framed in the glass like a closing statement. Behind him, passengers sat taller, softer, somehow changed. Even Nicole, eyes red, had begun to write something in her notebook. Maybe an apology, maybe a vow. Mia approached one last time. Sir, she said softly, I hope someday I lead with the same calm you did today. Julian smiled. Then start by never letting noise define your worth. He rose from his seat, buttoned his jacket, and looked around the cabin, the same space that had tried to shame him now frozen in respect. His final words were almost a whisper, but every ear heard them. Power doesn't need permission, it only needs proof. The engines roared, lifting the jet into morning light. Justice didn't shout, it ascended,